People in general are social creatures. We find a sense of community, and yet we need to find some sort of personal individuality within those communities. One of these ways is through religious studies and practices. But what happens when these philosophies and these ideologies are twisted and tainted by one specific individual or one group, and you realize you are no longer in a religious faith, but you are in a cult? Looking at this, you may ask yourself, is blind faith actually brainwashing? All religions, cults, communities, and groups have a message, an ideology or set of principles in which they base around. Some refer to it as a Bible, some refer to it as a pamphlet, some refer to it as a doctrine. But ultimately, the message can be simultaneously clear and unclear at the same time, leading only enough for you to become enthralled within, yet not necessarily entangled in. But all of these senses of community follow a simple thought pattern. That pattern being, you are not strong enough on your own. You're required to be involved. You need, therefore you want. Through this sense of want and need, you find yourself filling a void. That is where most cults thrive. Someone like Jim Jones was able to manipulate those that were deeply religious into believing that he was a healer, that he was able to fix everyone. All cult leaders give people the mindset that something needs to be fixed, and through the unrecognized agreement in which all people admit of knowing something is wrong, they build the principal philosophy around it. However, with cults, it's not necessarily actions that will change this outcome. It's individuals. Instead of believing a thing, they believe a person. And you believe it because that void is blinding. The approach that cults have is very similar to all communities. They come to you. They find you. They make you understand them on their level. Most people that get involved in cults at the beginning don't even realize that's what they are. They see them as just a sense of community, friendship, maybe even lovers. But that seed of trust is planted into the soil of an individual. But just like an actual seed, it doesn't just grow one way, it grows multiple ways. But that soil is not outgoing as one would believe. It is instead contained within a pot, and that pot is the cult. Some people, very rarely, are able to branch away from cults, and branch away from religion, and branch away from other senses of community that either were or eventually become toxic. The battle of these philosophies is really a fight between oneself, not being sure of who you are, trying to determine whether it's what was made of you or whether it's something you chose. And the deeper you get into it, the harder it is to determine what is what. When you're hooked into a sense of community this toxic, it's very similar to the mindset of pareidolia, which is when you see faces that aren't really there within photos, images, and different sites. We struggle to see the good within the bad, and vice versa. But even though that battle can only be fought and won by you, that doesn't mean you won't have help on the other side. There are two tools that all religions, groups, communities, and especially cults use in order to infiltrate one's mind. The first tool is the dogma, the principles and rules that were put in the first place to get you in. But the second, and this is the most important tool, is cognitive dissonance. This is when a person holds two or more contradictory beliefs. For a good example, simply look at the most recent events in our history. The concept of the QAnon conspiracy theory stems from the idea that the Democratic Party manipulated people into changing the results of the election to favor themselves. And yet, if that were true, they would not have lost any of their seats, any of their power. In fact, they would have won every single ballot. And yet, this is not the case. But they try to explain everything by creating a new version of their cognitive dissonance. And instead of following one principle, it's now several, becoming a spider web instead of a straight line. Religions have a tendency to do this as well, but cults operate the exact same way. Instead, they always seem to have a philosophy of one person is a god, and whatever that one person says is the word of God. You are merely a follower. But instead of following, you're a soldier, being commanded to do things that are unspeakable. It could be murder, or adding foot soldiers into the same doctrine that you yourself are involved in. The sad truth is you would find a purpose, but not your purpose. So all of this leads back to our original question. Is blind faith actually brainwashing? Some people believe that blind faith as a whole isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it allows you to take yourself out of your own mind and give away to people who know you better than yourself. Other people believe that following the principles and ideology of one individual or one group is pointless. I believe that having faith as a whole isn't necessarily a bad thing, but giving up one's own individuality can have dire consequences that may become irreversible. The cognitive dissonance can become a spider web, and you, the individual, can be swept up into these contradicting narratives, this philosophy of uncertainty, and these principles that go against your own core beliefs. But the answer really depends on you and your faith, your ideology, and what you choose to do with it. So long as you are able to separate yours from anyone else's for the safety of yourself and your loved ones. But in the end, these aren't answers. They are hypertheticals.
Come on! Kill me! No! God knows I want you. But you don't get to destroy who I am. You will go back to prison. And you will live the rest of your miserable life in a cage, knowing you'll never have Vanessa. That this city rejected you. It beat you. I beat you!
You know what I think you, hero? I think you're a half measure. I think you're a man who can't finish the job. I think that you're a coward. You know the one thing that you just can't see? You know you're one bad day away from being me. Yeah, I do the one thing that you can't. You hit them and they get back up. I hit them and they stay down. It's permanent. I make sure that they don't make it out on the street again. I take pride in that.